What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 267 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. And today, Chris, I think we could, like you mentioned before, we could have called this the episode that needs no name, because there's so many things that we're going to be talking about. How does this strike you? Making $300,000 per month, working 1 hour per day. That's intriguing right there, right?
That's why I picked it.
Right. Well, joining us to discuss all of this and so much more is Yong-Soo Chung. How are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, we're excited, and I guess I could give everyone a little bit more background on you. You host your own podcast, First Class Founders. We'll be checking that out. You were on our buddies over at Firing the Man podcast not too long ago. They introduced you to us, so we're excited about that. You have a 3PL company, GrowthJet. You got a lot of stuff going on here, and I think I want to turn it over to you, Yong-Soo, and just give you a few minutes to give everyone a little background, how you got into e-commerce and all the other stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I began my career actually in finance. So back in 2009, I graduated from college and right into Wall Street for a couple of years. And if you recall, back in 2008, 2009, it was probably the worst time to go into finance with the Great Recession. And so I was there for, in New York City. Actually, like our office was literally like off of Wall Street. So it felt really crazy to be a part of that. But then I wanted to get a taste of the side hustle stuff. So I actually started writing for a personal finance blog. And that was, they paid me $25 for every article. And it, took me a couple hours to write that. And so honestly, like I was probably way underpaid for those articles. But it was for me to get a taste of what a side hustle was. And kind of like, I didn't want to tie myself into the salary of like every 2 weeks you get paid whatever X amount, right? A fixed amount. And so, I started dabbling in that, and then actually started trying to build an iPhone app at that time as well. And that didn't go anywhere. And then realized that New York City didn't have the startup community that I was looking for. And my ultimate goal was to build my own business. And so I bought a one-way ticket to San Francisco. And remember, this is like probably one of the worst economies, so,
and how old were you at this time?
I was like 25.
Man.
Yeah. So
no
I packed my bags. I had one luggage, right? So I had one piece of luggage, flew to San Francisco, didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a job. And so I only knew two friends, one high school friend and one college friend. And I was crashing at his small apartment in Berkeley for about 3 months on an air mattress on the ground. And it, I don't know if you've ever slept on an air mattress that long, but your back just it kills, right? So, I was there for a while, and I finally found a job and an apartment. And then so I did this whole startup thing for a couple of years, and then decided to actually get into software engineering. So I actually went to a 12-week boot camp for software engineering. And that was crazy because it was literally Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. So this includes Saturday, right?
Oh my gosh.
It was like crazy. And I honestly learned probably the most I've ever learned, including my days in high school and college. It was so compact. And so after that, I got into a blockchain company called Ripple, and that was in 2014, so pretty early. And I stayed there for a year and a half. And
we're going to talk about that later on. I got lots of questions.
For those who listen, Dustin's face started to glow when he said Ripple.
Keep going there, Yong-Soo.
So I was there for a year and a half, and then obviously, Dustin, you probably know about all the financial regulation stuff that is going on and continues to go on today. But this all started actually in 2015, towards the end of 2015, when FinCEN came knocking on Ripple's door, and that's when our team was really making great progress. We were rolling along, and then literally one day they told us to just stop our project because it was we needed more compliance. And so at that point we were just kind of just not doing nothing, and it really bothered me because I'm someone that really likes to press forward and I like to see progress. And so that's when I knew like this is time and I needed to start my own company. And so I left Ripple at the end of 2015. And then I launched Urban EDC, which is my first e-commerce shop. And that was very interesting because I literally went from a software engineer at a blockchain Silicon Valley startup to selling pocket knives online. And that transition really didn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. And so, yeah, I was there. I did, I'm building Urban EDC. I'm still building it. I have a team now, and that's kind of like a perfect segue into this $300,000 per month, working 1 hour per day title that Chris chose. And this is perfect because I have a team now that operates, essentially it's kind of it's not on autopilot, but it is like pretty hands off for me. I just check in with them 1 hour per day. I have a general manager now, and I literally I talk to our general manager once, for about an hour a day, and that's pretty much it. So the systems are all in place. Everything's rolling along. It's growing very nicely, and that allowed me to actually focus on. So my wife and I actually brought home a French bulldog in 2017. And his Instagram grew like crazy, really fast. And this is like, earlier days of Instagram. And he now has 123,000 followers on Instagram and then about 30K on TikTok. And so we created a dog boutique, an online dog boutique brand called Spotted by Humphrey. And so that came out of, leveraging his audience. And then, yeah, we actually got even invited to Shopify in LA. They were doing like a shoot. And so my wife and Humphrey were on a set, and literally the film crew the week before were filming commercials for like Google. And so it was crazy because like Humphrey was like on stage with this. I don't know. It was just like really funny. And so after that, I started a climate neutral certified third-party logistics company called GrowthJet because I realized that there was a lot of fulfillment was a pain point for a lot of e-commerce shop owners. And we actually had paying clients before we even had a website or a name. And so at one point we're like, all right, we already have paying clients. We should probably make this into a real thing. And that's when GrowthJet was born. And we just moved into a 39,000 square foot warehouse. And so that's kind of rolling along nicely as well. And then finally, I have the podcast now called First Class Founders. And so now I'm sharing all the lessons that I'm learning, growing the business. And I made a ton of mistakes, and it's a place for me to share my journey, my experiences. And, if I can inspire like any entrepreneur out there to start their own business or avoid the mistakes that I made, then, I'll be really, really happy with that result. So yeah, it's a place for me to just share everything that I've learned. So that's that's the background.
Yeah, you could tell. That's why I had a hard time decisioning on what topic to get. There's so many things here. We have the French bulldog, we have the 300K per month, we have the GrowthJet, we have the podcast.
Crypto.
So many different things going on.
Yeah, it is. It's impressive. And, one thing that I took from that was that I think is interesting for anybody listening is that you kind of took a journey. Like you weren't afraid. You were young. That's an advantage. I don't know if you were married when you were 25, when you it doesn't sound like you had one suitcase, took out to San Francisco. You definitely weren't married. But you just kept figuring out what you wanted to do. You knew what you didn't want to do, and I'm sure Wall Street probably cured you of that pretty quick. That's the grind, 80-hour work weeks that you get in that environment. And, you just went after finding what you wanted to do. And I think that's important for everybody. That this is not the days of working in a corporation for 45 years and, collecting some pension at the end of it anymore. You can pivot and shift all the time now. And yeah, I think that's like a good lesson for it. Don't be scared. Don't be scared to go try something new. But let's go back because your story is fascinating. So after Wall Street, you left and you went to San Francisco, and then you said you started your e-commerce business then, so that was before working at Ripple. You started your e-commerce business?
No, so actually, I'll get into that a little more in detail. So I worked at a startup. It was like a mobile ad startup, and I was there for 2 years. And that time was also crazy too, because we were a pretty hot startup at the time, and we were, we went to South by Southwest, and we had like Coolio, the rapper, rest in peace. But
Rest in peace, yeah.
rest in peace. So he was like, he literally stayed with our, like the company rented a house, a large house, and he stayed with us because he was rapping at our party. And literally the next morning I woke up and he was like sitting on the kitchen table, like playing his own tune from iTunes and just rapping to it. And so it was crazy. He was literally like playing an album, playing a track from his own computer on iTunes, just rapping to it. And yeah, I mean, this world was,
That's
it's wild, right? And he was telling us all these stories about the rapping industry back in the 90s and how like it's so different back then. And like, yeah, I mean, it was crazy.
They don't make music like they used to.
No. So I was there, and so, and then, with these startups, as you know, like they burn money like crazy. And that's probably why, maybe they shouldn't have had Coolio on, paid Coolio for this party. But yeah, the company had to cut down, and I was actually part of the layoffs. So I got cut. And then that's when I decided to go into the boot camp for 12 weeks and to learn software engineering. Because I thought that was a really valuable skill to know in San Francisco. So I did that. And then that's when I went to Ripple right afterwards and joined them as a software engineer. And I was like employee 30, I would say. And obviously the company is huge now. And so, yeah, that was a really interesting time. And that's, I guess I'm like really, really grateful for that experience, just because the people that were working there are like some of the smartest people I've ever met. So yeah. And then after that, I started the company. Yeah, pocket knife. Yeah.
Is that so? You're selling pocket knives? Is that right?
We're selling not just pocket knives. So it's called EDCs. That stands for everyday carry. So it's stuff you carry on a daily basis, like your wallet, maybe a flashlight, a pen. It's basically anything that you carry, and everybody technically has an everyday carry. Like you would probably carry your wallet with you, but like a lot of people carry things based on their needs. But then there's also an interesting element of like people carry things based on, almost like what the item represents to them. So they'll carry like a good luck coin, for example, or they'll carry a knife that their grandfather passed down to them. And like, it's like almost like a sentimental, like, it's almost like an accessory for guys. Like instead of carrying purses, guys carry these like random, like, trinkets and pocket knives and stuff. And so that's kind of the business is essentially everyday carry, stuff you carry on a daily basis.
How many SKUs does that business have?
It's a lot, actually. Over 1,000.
Are you drop shipping all these? Or are these all like warehouse stored? You buying them? You got them all?
They're all warehouse stored inventory. And that's a very challenging part of our business, is managing inventory, because we do have over 1,000 SKUs. And some of them are like, we work with custom knife makers, and they make like one knife for us. And so we literally create one SKU for that one item. And the item is like over $1,000. It's a custom knife, but they go really fast too. Most of these are collectors. And so they, they're not afraid of spending that and just like buying it, because you can't buy these knives very easily because they're all collectible items.
How did you build this by yourself? Like 1,000 SKUs with a Shopify account and getting traffic and getting sales. Like that's no easy thing to do. How'd you get all that? How'd you get that started?
Yeah, great question. So I think when you first start, you have nothing. So I always tell everyone, all the entrepreneurs that I talk to, like when you're first starting out, that is the hardest point, because you're literally creating something from nothing, and no one wants to work with you, right? Like you have no credibility, you have nothing. And so that was probably the hardest part in the beginning. And so I was reaching out to a lot of different partnerships. And so a lot of different brands. And so the company started predominantly as like a retailer. So we would reach out to brands and get their products in. And then we just slowly built that reputation. And now we do our own production runs of items, like, of knives and whatnot. But in the beginning, we were just reaching out to a bunch of partnerships, brands, and trying to get them to work with us. And to be honest, I got a lot of no's, mostly no's, right? And but that's something that's you should expect in the beginning. I mean, I think it would be unreasonable to believe that you'll get more yeses than nos in the beginning. And so you just have to have thick skin and just continue to push forward. You know, you'll get a win here and then leverage that win, maybe get an introduction to another brand and just kind of continue to compound the relationships. And so really the beginning part for me is building the partnerships and collaborations. And one thing that I should note also is we actually got banned from Facebook ads because we were selling pocket knives. And so that was in 2017. And that was a big channel for us. Our sales literally dropped like 40% next month after we got the ban. And so I just learned the lesson the hard way, which is like you can't rely on these platforms because one day they could just take it away from you, like an algorithm changes or whatever, and like your business and your livelihood is at risk. And so it's really important to like kind of like know that. I mean, if you are doubling down on what's working, that's fine for now, but just know that that can be taken away from you at any point if you don't own your own, you know, your customer base or your audience. It's just really important to just remember that. So
When you started reselling other brands,
yeah,
what was the advantage? Like, I'm imagining you were reselling these brands and then you saw how the process works. And so you made your own brands, or you just got
yeah,
your own products and you started doing less wholesale and more
yep.
of your own products. Is that right?
Yeah. So the way that we did this is I'd say, well, let me describe the culture of Everyday Carry community first. So we work with a lot of like makers. So makers are, you know, these guys in their garages who make these like fancy bottle openers that cost like $100, but they're made in small batches, like, you know, 10 at a time. Like maximum is like maybe 50 or 100. And so the culture of Everyday Carry is that you know, these makers would post it up for sale and they literally they'll be gone like within, you know, within hours or minutes. And so it's this like high demand, like hype type of culture. And so what we wanted to do was like create that kind of buzz each week. And so each Wednesday we have something called a gear drop, and that's like an event that we have where everything that we bring into the shop, Wednesday is the time to go get, you know, go get those items. And we literally have people setting their alarm clocks trying to get these items. And like I actually got a message one time from a guy who ran his own law firm, and he really wanted a flashlight. And this is like a, you know, $500 flashlight. And he told all of his employees, I think they were like 4 or 5 at the time, to go on the website to try to get this flashlight. And no one was able to get one. And so he got really upset at me. He's like, dude, like I literally told my entire team to try to get this flashlight and like no one got it. Like, did you even have any in stock? And like, yeah, we did, but like he was just too late, I guess. Right. So so it's just like driving hype that really kind of feeds into that culture of like, okay, everyone is already behaving this way in terms of like this hype. And so we wanted to provide that event like experience for them. So going back to your question, we started with makers, and when we reach out to these guys, a lot of them were like, hey, we don't want to be part of, you know, what you have because you have not, like, we don't know your audience, like we don't know you're new, and like, you know, what value do you bring to me? Like I sell this out so fast myself. But then eventually as we grew and we gained a strong reputation within the industry and the community, these guys started opening up to us because they're like, wow, this is such a cool company that I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of their story. And so they started working with us like one by one. And now, I mean, we have makers just like, you know, reaching out to us and being like, hey, like, let's do something together. And so it's a big shift in the way that, you know, as your reputation grows, you get more leverage. And so, but the important thing here is that you don't want to stay like, you don't want to just take everyone in, because you want to be still going out there and finding the really, really, you know, the makers that are out there that are untouchable, basically. And so we're still going out there and we are still doing outreach, and we're aiming higher and higher, right? So just because you have people coming in that want to work with you doesn't mean that you should just work with them. I mean, yeah, you know, work with a few of them, but you need to maintain that level of standard, right, for yourself, and keep pushing higher and higher. And so I think that's a really good good reminder. So yeah, we started doing these production runs, partnering up with makers directly, and so we do like a royalty model where they get a percentage cut from each sale, and so each production run that we have is partnered up with a maker that designed it, and then we produced it, and we're selling it and distributing it ourselves.
Oh,
You're like a marketplace.
We are, yeah, I guess you could say it's like a very curated, like specific marketplace. Yeah.
that's
What was your first hire?
First hire was it was in customer support, and that actually ended up being really great because he is now our general manager. He's been with us for a while, and he's just kind of climbed up more responsibilities, and then just now like he's very, very good at his job. And I had to, each step of the way, there's learnings to be made. But yeah, so.
And then to get that now, I mean, this is a very involved business. It's a fascinating business model, by the way. It's a nice twist on like what we would call like private label. You're kind of getting these creators to design products that you can get produced, but then you have these flash sales of like these high ticket items. It is higher price point, probably than like our typical listener, Amazon seller. If you're in that $1,000 range or whatever, I'm sure there's a range there, but that's a much higher ticket. How did you manage to get that to where you've sort of removed yourself from a lot of the aspects of the business to get it to this 1 hour per day of management?
Yeah. Awesome question. So there's 3 systems that I believe every entrepreneur should have in their business. And so the first is the actual like value proposition. Like, what are you selling them, right? So for this e-commerce shop, Urban EDC, I guess it's the products, obviously, but then it's not only the products, it's the entire experience of like the Wednesday gear drop, making sure that goes smoothly, following up with them, all that. So that's like the promise of what you're delivering, right? So that's and then the second part is making sure that whatever you're promising them is actually being done effectively. So there's like the value that you're promising, and then the actual like value delivery. So like making sure you actually deliver on what you promised them. And so those 2 systems, if you have those in place, then the third system is like the operational thing. So you can like one person should, or a team should, make sure that these 2 pieces are working simultaneously, just smoothly. And so those are kind of the 3 systems. Like you have the 2, and then you have the 1 on top that kind of manages both systems. And so for a while, I was like the person doing the managing of both systems. But then eventually I was able to, elevate this employee that we had, and he became this position here. So now he overlooks both systems here. And so I think really for entrepreneurs, like you need to look at everything in terms of your systems. And so you don't want to be the person actually doing the work. The job of a CEO, the job of a business owner is to constantly look at your systems and see how you can make them more efficient, how you can, optimize the flow. And your job is not to actually do the things themselves, but it's to essentially make the machine like a much better machine. And that shift is a really important one, because you'll never get out of the working for yourself forever, like, because you're always like focusing on, oh, I gotta take product photos, I gotta write the product description. But if you're the one doing it, like, when are you ever gonna grow the business and hire people? Like, it's all related.
It seems like you've got that settled. It feels like you've got that figured out, like the systems and getting that in line. Is this a rinse and repeat that you can do in another category that you may have your eye on? And you mentioned your French bulldog and growing Instagram. Are you focusing, like, are you going to do that now with like this pet boutique? Is like the same systems apply?
Yeah. So the pet boutique. So my wife actually runs that predominantly herself, and so it's the same model. So I genuinely believe that business it's hard, but it's simple when you think about it. And And I'll give you a great example. So the podcast First Class Founders is a new podcast. So November is when I launched it. And I am right now in the very early stages of that. So right now I'm doing everything myself. And that's okay, because that's how every business should really start. It's like giving birth to a new business child, right? You need to make sure like it's alive. I mean, it's gonna do some crazy stuff, and you gotta make sure that it doesn't veer off into a weird direction. And then eventually the business itself will grow up to a point where, okay, maybe I can, hire I don't know, like a babysitter. Let's keep going with this example, and maybe like come up with systems like, oh, at certain times you need to, I don't know, like do this, this, and this. And so you come up with those systems along with your team or people that you bring on. And so for First Class Founders, I'll eventually bring on someone to help me with processes and kind of manage these systems. But then I'm not there yet, because I'm still trying to figure out what the best cadence, what the best systems are. And so once I kind of have a good idea, then I'll bring someone in and we'll work on it together. And then eventually, you kind of graduate to a point where you can have someone that person, as long as they're aligned on your values and your like vision of what you want to do, they should be able to like essentially do what you wanted to do, right? And so I call this the I, we, they framework. So I is the very beginning, where you first start out. You're doing everything yourself, and then after you find something going, then you go to the we phase, where you start hiring people and you work with them to figure out the systems, making sure that they understand everything. And then the they phase is they run the business for you, and you're just making sure that your vision and the culture of the company and all that is rolling along just fine. And of course, you'll continue to make sure that everything is fine. Like I'm not gonna just disappear and be like, all right, guys, you're on your own. Like, I'm not gonna do that. But it's still, the 300K working 1 hour per day. I mean, that happens because of these systems, and because I've elevated my employees to such levels now where we're so in sync, aligned with each other, that like we finish each other's sentences. Like, okay, you want to do this? Oh yeah, that sounds good. Like, so it takes a long time to build that trust. But really that's a critical component to being able to scale yourself.
Creating systems sucks. I used to do that. I used to have to do that. And Dustin's is probably the same way. We like to just go and keep going, and somebody else can create the system behind us and watch us do it. Like, I hate doing it, but I understand the importance of it. I get it why you do it. I just don't like to create them, because it just takes time away from doing other things. How do you create these things? Are you like going through Loom and like creating your own steps, and somebody's writing them out? Like, how are you creating these systems?
Yeah. So I do think that communication is really important, and having a central place of a database. So we use Notion as kind of like our central hub, and everyone has access to that, and all the information's in there. So we have, and anytime we make a purchase on inventory, we like record that. We record the date when we paid them, the amount we paid them. And then we put the drop date. So drop date is like, when are we going to release this? And these are all fluid. So we can move that drop date to a future drop date, but at least we have something to put in there so that it keeps us accountable. And so, yeah, database is really important. And then as your team grows, I would say communication is really important. So I use Slack. So we use Slack as a company, and it's you have to repeat multiple times, because you can never be sure that they understood. But you can find cadences where, for example, we have the weekly gear drop, and so that actually keeps everybody accountable, and that's a system on its own. If you think about it, like, we don't miss a Wednesday gear drop. And so if someone is like, for example, going on a vacation, I mean, that's totally cool, but like, don't drop the ball on your responsibilities, right? So like, you can work ahead for a full week, and then you can go away for 7 days or whatever. But like, the systems keep the business accountable and keeps the people accountable. And that's why it's, in my opinion, it's like everything.
We didn't talk about this, and this is not even in your form here, but how are you using AI in your company? How are you using ChatGPT? There's other ones out there. How are you using AI within your company?
Yeah, so I think AI is really powerful. We use so Urban EDC does not use AI right now, but I use AI for First Class Founders, the podcast, and the way I use it is I will. I don't want to use just whatever it spits back out because I think that's just not good practice. So I'll make sure that the prompts are really important, obviously, and so you give them, you train the ChatGPT, the AI to be a persona, like someone that you like your target audience, right? And then you can get ideas from it. And so right now I use it for like content ideas, and then also I use it for examples. And so if I have a point that I'm making, I want to make sure that I provide some good examples. And like ChatGPT, just it has ways of pulling out those examples, and I'll be like, wow, like this is really good. But sometimes they're like completely irrelevant, and so you have to make that decision yourself and pick out what's good. But yeah, it's like anything else, like using it as a tool. Like you're gonna make sure that whatever you're putting out there makes sense for whatever you're using it for. And so I use AI mostly for First Class Founders. Nothing for Urban EDC. I think my wife uses AI for some of the maybe copywriting for the posts, social media posts. But yeah, that's about it.
There's some interesting applications. I mean, Chris and I play around with this all the time, and especially for, like you said, like copy on a listing or anything like that. I mean, it's a really good way to get creative with A/B testing different titles and bullet points and different things like that. And that leads me to a question I had, because I think this is interesting to our audience who, I mean, a lot of them are they're in the e-commerce realm on the Amazon side. And Chris and I have been in this boat as well. We've launched our own Shopify stores for our brands. It's not been the focus necessarily. It's there's this whole thing about if somebody buys on Shopify, that's great. We own that customer. We have all their data. We have essentially nothing from Amazon. But from a more Amazon seller centric perspective, this just Shopify is just kind of out there. I mean, it's if you're getting like 5% of what you're making on Amazon, it's like, great, we're getting something. But you started everything D2C. And did you ever explore the Amazon side? Did you ever try to list products? Do you now? Or is this a play just to make sure it all stays on your D2C sites?
Yeah, this is a great question. So not a lot of people know this, but the Urban EDC actually started out of trying to create my own channel to sell products that I bought to sell on Amazon. And so I actually, it's a funny story. So basically, I bought, and this is a big rookie entrepreneurial mistake, but I bought like $15,000 worth of these earbuds, I guess you could call them. Like they're earplugs, but they're really high quality. They're like $200 each, but I saw them on Kickstarter and I was like, wow, I think these will sell really well on Amazon. And I searched, did some, use some tools and stuff on, for Amazon keywords. And I thought that it was a good product. And so I put 15,000 down without even thinking. And the products came and I was trying to sell them on Amazon. So I created all the, the product page and all that stuff and tried running some PPC ads. And so we're doing Amazon FBA. So I actually sent them to a place to do all the bagging and all that stuff. I'm sure your audience knows about all that. I realized that they just sat there. Like there was like no movement. I was like, this is so weird. Like it just wasn't working. And so what happened was I decided to just take everything out of all the warehouses on Amazon. So I got them all back. So our house was like filled with these headphones. and so I had to find a way to sell through these headphones or these earbuds. And I thought, okay, well, technically this could be considered everyday carry if you're carrying this with you. And so I created Urban EDC partially as a channel to try to sell these headphones. And so we did sell them on the website. And to be honest, they didn't move very well on that website. So I had to continue to find other channels to sell these. But But yeah, it was actually a way to try to move these headphones that I bought, which is a mistake, that without even validating it, right? So yeah, that's kind of my experience selling on Amazon.
Everybody starts somewhere, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, hey, we talk to people every day that are in the same boat. They're launching their first product on Amazon. They overbought. It's not moving. Here's a strategy for you. Open up Shopify, learn the ways to drive traffic to it, and sell your products. And then you can, build a brand around that entire thing, and then follow the same sort of model that you did, which worked really well. Any chance of you going back to Amazon with anything now that you've got, like, have you ever looked? Do people search for your brand on Amazon?
I did look, and I think that it's honestly, it is something that I've thought about. A lot of these products that we get in sell really quickly, and so we haven't needed to, like, we don't have enough inventory to like give them out to FBA, like the warehouses and stuff. But I don't know, it almost, to me, it cheapens the brand a little bit, and I'm not sure if that's just me, but I don't know, it's something about having, because we want to have a premium experience like Urban EDC. One thing that we do is we don't put how, like, when you're selling something, it's like $9.99. Like, we don't put the 99 cents on there. So our pricing is like, it would just be $9. And we do that on purpose because that, in my opinion, will drive the value of each product higher. And so when we sell a knife for, $249, it's not $249.95, for example, right? Because then it's like, I don't know, it just feels a little bit cheap to me. And so
Yeah.
the environment of Amazon just seems a little bit, maybe it's not, maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way, but it doesn't seem like, a place where like people look to get premium stuff. And so that's why we've shied away from it. But we might explore that in the future, because I know we're discussing maybe trying to get a knife that's a little bit more affordable. And so maybe that's a good place to
Yeah, it could be
explore
like
that.
a place to sell like a $20, $25,
Yeah.
$40 knife instead of like
Yeah.
a $500 knife. You won't sell that many on
Yeah.
Amazon.
I don't think
You have a
the collector
yeah,
market's
but
not on Amazon.
when you do these drops, are you like building a drop calendar? So you already know what you're dropping the entire
Yeah.
year right
Well,
now?
not the entire year. It's probably what, like 2 weeks out, like 2-3 weeks out, we start planning. But remember, when we're purchasing inventory, like, we have a Notion document that has all this. And so all we need to do is like go to Notion and like filter out, gear drop date of 3 weeks out, and it'll show all the products that we theoretically want to drop on that day. And of course, we might have to move that if there's shipping delays and whatnot. But we have a scheduling system that is already built into place with all the inventory purchases. And so we don't have to think about like, oh my God, next week, what are we dropping? And then like go through and like try to make this. And there's no way you can plan a year out. That's like way too many variables.
Yeah. When you look at these makers, people that are doing these products, is there like an application process that you've built where the maker has to have a following, they have to have a TikTok, they have to have an Instagram, they have to have, some sort of like push so that when the product goes live, they bring their audience with them to your site? Or is just free game? Anybody can be a maker.
Yeah. So that's a very subjective decision, I would say. And so I say that because each maker can bring something to the table that's not necessarily driven by audience growth. And so, for example, like, there could be a maker who is really well connected in the industry, and like, he's able to make tons of introductions for us, but he may not be the guy that has a large audience himself. Like, we'll still consider that, because that could be a very strategic partnership. And so it's a very tricky, it's not a one size fits all approach. But I mean, yeah, for the most part, we try to work with makers that have a large following. And the funny part is, this is not a concrete thing. It moves. So hype for a specific maker can go up, but just as fast as it goes up, it can go back down really fast. And so literally like my colleague, he went to a trade show this past weekend, and so he just wrote up a report about what was happening there, and he said that some of the makers that we thought were really hot, and they were hot at one point, they're now a little bit like on a decline. And so we now don't want to, like, not necessarily don't want to work with them, but we're more wary about that, and we want to make sure that we're always working with like the up and coming guys that are people want to get their hands on. And so it's really important to like know the pulse of the community. And so like, oh, this table had a huge line, like let's go check out his work. Why does he have so many people, so much hype? So like figuring that out is like part of the game, I guess. And so yeah.
What a fascinating model.
I know.
I feel like I could go all day on this conversation because it's so unique. There's a lot of things that come to mind about like the psychology about hyping up an event. Like you do not want to miss out. Don't be the one without this. I mean, there was all those back in the 5-10 years ago, all those like deal of the day sites. What was it? Woot? Was that one of them that was
maybe Groupon was one?
Yeah,
I think
Groupon kind of had that, limited. You see the counter going down, it's like there's only this many left, and that you get that hype, but then niching that down into a community that's like ravenous for these products is really interesting to me. And
well, it's like sometimes people think that's BS. Sometimes people think that's like not true. Like, oh, they've got plenty of them. Right. I can wait a few days. But when they start to miss out, now they know that they're not joking around. Like they only have 100 of them or 10 of them. So it does work, but it's unique.
Yeah, I love it. And
I do too.
Again, we could talk about this all day, and we didn't even get to talk about Ripple that much. I know we're coming up to a hard stop, but all I remember is that I was into crypto around that time. I don't know what that was, like 2018, 19, something like that. And so I was a part of all these Twitter groups and Facebook groups around crypto, and everyone's like Ripple to the moon. Every 5 seconds it was like Ripple to the moon, Ripple to the moon. And it was like, I don't even know what it was. It was like 12, 13 cents or something like that. Or I think people are freaking out. Everyone's like, it's going to go to $1. It's going to go to $1. And everyone's like, oh, it's going to be $100. And I was like, this is my get rich plan. I had a lot of Ripple around other. So another time we have to hear that, just the journey of what that's like. Cause I think blockchain is fascinating, like super fascinating. I think there's a lot, and I think there's a lot that can go on to, even with e-commerce and other things with what's going on with blockchain. So we'll have to get you back on. I feel like what do we cover here? Like 2 out of the 200.
Yeah, we barely touched on
possible topics we could talk about, but Yong-Soo, man, it was fun. Thanks for joining us, and we'll make this a regular appearance here.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation, and yeah, I know we can talk more about Ripple next time if you want us to. Yeah, I'm perfectly cool with that too. So
yeah, just in crypto in general, and yeah, I think people that think like you do, like we do, people that are interested in a podcast like this, they're open to new areas, what is another side hustle, what's another way I can invest my money, because that's another thing that happens when you're making 300,000 working 1 hour. Now you got to look, okay, what do I do with that? How can I invest this and get more return out of it? So we'll talk about all that and more some other time. But
awesome,
Yong-Soo, thanks for joining us, man. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're watching this video, you'll see at the bottom, Chris just changed it, but anybody interested in using Solozo to help manage and automate your Amazon advertising, we got a discount for you. It's podcast 20 is the code, and they'll get you 20% off your first month of Solozo. Plus you get to talk to me or Chris. We'll talk to you before you sign up. So what could go wrong? It's a great offer. So check that out. And thanks everybody for listening. Yong-Soo, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back at this next time. Have a good one, everybody.